What happens when you are in a marriage or a relationship that is psychological and emotionally abusive,
Mm.
slow, coercive control over time that you don't really know what's happening? You know that it's off, you know that it's not right, you don't know exactly what it is, right?
Right.
Because it's not physical violence. And so
Right.
it doesn't fit that mold.
Join us at the inaugural Ascend Summit, where empowerment and healing become part of your new reality. Presented by You Are Not Your Trauma podcast, this summit is your gateway to growth, connection, and discovering your true potential. And it's all happening June 28th and 29th in Dallas, Texas. Don't miss your chance to be a part of something life-changing. Early bird tickets are on sale now. Secure your spot today by going to ascend.youarenotyourtrauma.com.
Welcome to the You Are Not Your Trauma podcast, a show that reminds you that you are not alone, your experiences matter, and you are not defined by what you've been through. Each week, you will hear from the host and invited guests who have either personal or professional experience with trauma. They will share their stories and strategies for overcoming past wounds and beginning the journey toward healing and wholeness. Now, here's your host, a gifted speaker, author, coach, and entrepreneur, Harriet M. Harris.
Hello, and welcome to a brand new episode of You Are Not Your Trauma, the podcast that brings hope, healing, and inspiration to those who have experienced life's most challenging moments. It's here in this space that we peel back the layers of trauma, not just to expose it, but to understand and overcome it. I'm your host, Harriet M. Harris, and I am so glad that you're here today. I hope that this show is an important part of your healing journey. Now, today we're hitting on a powerful topic, the journey of self-rediscovery, rebuilding identity post-trauma. Now, it's a path that many of us find ourselves on, often without a map. But together, we're here to explore, learn, and support each other. Rebuilding one's identity after trauma isn't just about moving past painful experiences around. It's about rediscovering who we are beyond those scars, redefining ourselves in the light of our resilience, and embracing the transformative power of self-rediscovery. Today, we have an extraordinary guest. Now, imagine someone who's faced some of life's darkest moments and not only survived them, but turned those battles into a mission to help others. That's our guest today, Stephany Ann. Now, Stephany is an attorney, recipient of the Governor's Award for Advocacy with Survivors of Domestic Violence, and an international best-selling author who triumphed over narcissistic abuse. And she's here today to share her insights with us. Welcome, Stephany. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me on your show today. I'm really excited to be here.
Absolutely. Well, Stephany, could you begin just by telling us a little bit about yourself and your professional journey and the work that you've done in advocacy and support for survivors of domestic violence?
Yeah, so I grew up in a family of all girls, a very, very peaceful, very loving family. My parents actually, they're still married, they're still together. They really modeled healthy relationships and a healthy marriage. Yet, I still found myself into abusive marriages.
Mm.
But what was really challenging though was that I did not know I was in these abusive marriages. And my background was in
Mhm.
domestic violence. So I worked at the
Mm.
prosecutor's office and was an advocate for victims of domestic violence. I won the governor's award. But 20, 30 years ago, we were really focused on physical violence. What happens
Right.
when you are in a marriage or a relationship that is psychological and emotionally abusive,
Mm.
slow, coercive control over time that you don't really know what's happening. You know that it's off, you know that it's not right. You don't know exactly what it is, right? Because it's not physical violence. And so
Right.
it doesn't fit that mold. And
Mm,
so, and here I am. That was my background, and as an attorney and all this stuff. And so, my journey has just been really discovering what happened to me, what I
mhm,
went through, what narcissistic abuse is,
mm,
and how to heal from it, and how to reinvent ourselves and
wow.
rediscover our true authentic self, because you lose that, or you hide it, you
Yeah.
bury it deep down. And so, as a part that you don't want controlled. And so, we
Hmm.
keep it hidden. And so that's, it has kind of been my journey. And then I discovered some healing modality tools that helped me really reprocess and rewire my brain and my thoughts. Because when you leave these narcissistic abusive relationships, it is as if you have left an occult. You are brainwashed.
Mm,
You have been
wow.
conditioned. And so, that saying that people say, oh, time will heal, just go get involved in something. No, time
Mm,
does not heal. You actually have to
yeah.
do the deep, hard inner work. And
Yeah.
with that inner work is rediscovering your true authentic self all over again, becoming, reconditioning, and then becoming. And so that's kind of a little bit of my journey. And I was helping women who've also been through this. I'm not doing that right now.
Hmm.
My first ex-husband was a covert narcissist, and I was married to him for 14 years. And then he's used legal against me for another 6 years. He actually committed suicide just a couple months ago. And so that has
Oh,
kind
so
of
sorry.
just put everything on hold. So right now I'm
Understand.
focusing on sharing my story and
Right.
speaking, and knowing that even if one person
Absolutely.
if it helps one person, then I'm doing my work. And I'm working on a series of books right now called When You Love a Narcissist. And it's kind of my journey and my roadmap through what I've went through. So
Wow. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing all of that. And I'm excited to hear more about what you have to share about your journey. I definitely feel like it could help someone. But before we dive into that discussion, let's take a very quick commercial break. And when we return, we're going to go deeper into our conversation with Stephany. We'll be right back.
Imagine having resources at your fingertips that support you through every step of your healing journey. That's exactly what you'll get with the You Are Not Your Trauma app. Access guided meditations that find your peace, read inspiring stories that resonate with your experiences, and join a community that truly understands. But that's not all. Dive into the Healing Chronicles and participate in community challenges. It's more than an app. It's a companion on your journey of self-discovery and healing. Download the You Are Not Your Trauma app today and join a community where your story matters and your healing journey is honored. Find us on the App Store and Google Play Store. Your journey to healing starts now.
Okay, we are back. Welcome back to You Are Not Your Trauma. Again, we are here. If you're just joining us, we're here with Stephany, who is sharing her empowering story of self-discovery after narcissistic abuse. Now, Stephany, if you're comfortable, could you share just a little bit more about your personal experience with narcissistic abuse, and how it led you where you are today on this path of self-discovery and identity rebuilding?
yeah, absolutely. It's such a, I feel like it's such a relevant topic right now. Like,
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't know if it's just me and,
No, I've
my
seen it
social
everywhere.
media. I'm like,
No.
God, everything is narcissism right now. And it's like,
Like it's coming
whoa,
out, honestly. I think
yeah,
it
right?
people they're being really discovered. Like I think kind of like what you mentioned in the very beginning, people didn't know that this is what they were dealing with. They didn't have a name to call it. And because it
Yes.
wasn't physical, they didn't know what it was. So now that it's being brought to the light, I agree. I see it everywhere.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree as well. And so, okay, so it's not just me that is seeing
No, it's
narcissism
not.
everywhere.
No.
So, I don't know if, all the middle schools did this, but the middle school that I went to, public school, we all had to study Greek mythology, right? And Narcissus was a man in Greek mythology who fell in love with his reflection, and he never left the pool. He was so enamored with himself, and life passed him by. And so, a narcissist is a person that has been diagnosed with a personality disorder. So it is under those cluster B personality disorders. And it's really important to note that it's a personality disorder. They change their personality. And so to be like, some of the criteria is they have to have this grandiose sense of self-importance, this preoccupation with fantasies of unlimited power, wealth, beauty, whatever. They have this belief that they are the most special, wonderful, perfect person in the world, and everyone should be worshiping them because they are so wonderful.
Right. Okay.
They have this sense of entitlement, and they are some of the most arrogant people you will ever meet. They will exploit others to get whatever they want. They have a lack of empathy. They can't empathize for what you're going through. They want to be respected. And they have this excessive need for admiration, adoration. They want you to fawn all over them. They want to be worshipped, essentially.
Wow.
And they want you to give. They are not receivers. I mean, they are not givers. They take and take and take. And so when you have been in a relationship with a narcissist, it is exhausting. It is a burden. You end up doing everything and giving and giving and giving. Me and my kids, whenever they were little, and even now, we have the same, like, our love cup. Mom, my love cup is empty right now. Could we go have some special time? Can we, go do something together?
So sweet.
Yeah, but when you're with a narcissist, I couldn't go to any of my husbands and say, hey, my love cup is empty. What about me? What about my needs? Who is filling up my needs? Because I am constantly giving and giving and giving and giving, and I am exhausted and I'm not getting anything back. So the relationship there's no reciprocity. And
Makes
so you
sense.
just feel drained. And like, when you are driving your car and the gas light has been on forever and you're like, oh, please God, let me just make it to the gas station, because you're running on fumes, or you're waiting for your next paycheck or whatever. It's like you start to come to this place, and you start to exist from this place of just the fumes. You're just going through the motions to get through it. So that is a narcissist. And similar with domestic violence, there is a cycle of narcissistic abuse. And again, narcissistic abuse is all about power and control, the same with domestic violence. And so the first stage is the idealization stage. Then there's the devaluation stage. And then there is devaluation, intermittent love bombing. And then there's the discard. So let's talk about these stages, and then I will share some of my own personal experiences within these stages, so that if listeners can say, like, oh, okay. So the idealization phase, when you were first dating a person, you're first getting to know a person, it's exciting, right? You want to get to know them. You want them to know everything about you. You're super excited. Well, it's the same with a narcissist. And these people, they are very charming, very charismatic, very beautiful, very wonderful people in the beginning.
Right.
And so many people say, well, don't you see the red flags? How have you been fooled and manipulated? They can fool and manipulate everyone. They know how to work a room. So, that you're meeting this person, and they walk into a room, they light the room up. My two ex-husbands, I would say they could get any girl that they wanted in this room. That is how charismatic and charming and beautiful they were.
Wow.
But they chose me. They make you feel special in the beginning. They make it all about you in the beginning. Here is a man or a woman, because there's both male and female narcissists.
Right.
My experience is only with the men. But here's a man who could get any woman in the room, and he wants you. He's giving you all his attention, all his focus, and he really is so thoughtfully into you. He puts you on a pedestal, and he essentially worships the ground you walk on. You are a queen, and he treats you like a queen. So when they start saying words like, "You are my soulmate," where were you 20 years ago? We are destined to be together. I manifested you. Tell me all your secrets, all your insecurities. I want to know everything about you.
Wow.
And they're great listeners. And so you open up. You tell them all your secrets. You tell them all your insecurities. My second husband knew that my first husband spent 14 years cheating on me. He knew that I had an insecurity with other beautiful women, or just women in general, who were flirty and flirtatious. And so he knew all this stuff, but yet they make you feel so comfortable sharing all of it because you have truly believed you have found your person.
Right.
They wine, dine, take you out. I mean, it's great in the beginning, but what you don't know that is happening in the beginning is they are mirroring you. They are mirroring your values. They are mirroring your hobbies. They are mirroring your likes and dislikes. How is it that this guy that I just met, and I've only been talking to him for 1 month, he also wants to sell all his worldly possessions and get on a sailboat and go sail around the world? Wow, that was on my bucket list. That's on his too. He loves, we have the same taste of
So there's some
music.
manipulation involved here.
Oh, very much. So, when I said in the beginning, this is a disordered personality. This is a narcissist, is someone that has many layers of protective self. For whatever reason, they've had to create all these new identities and all these new personalities. And so when they are with you in the idolization phase, they are mirroring you, and they put on the personality of the person you want them to be.
Wow.
So, I'm looking for tall, dark, handsome. I'm looking for someone who can sail a boat. I'm looking for all these things. He becomes all
And they
those
become
things.
that. Wow.
They will lie about it too. Oh yeah, I know how to sail. I know how to fly an airplane. I know how to do all of this. I have my pilot's license. But you get caught up in the moment, and so you believe everything because it is as if you have found your person.
Yeah.
But they can only hold that fakeness for so long. And then we say the mask comes off, right?
Wow.
And a different layer of their personality presents itself. And so once they have you hooked in the relationship, once they know that, hey, we're moving in together, hey, let's run off to Vegas and get married. Let's start making babies because I want them now too, and we're getting older, so let's just do it now. Once they get you hooked, it can take a month, it can take a couple months, it can take a year, or maybe a year or two, where they're playing this character, right? Of this person that you want them to become. But someone can only pretend for so long. And once they know that you are not going to abandon them, you are not going to leave them, the mask comes off, and then the devaluation phase happens. So for someone who has just been treated like a queen and has been put on this pedestal and has essentially been worshipped and has fallen in love with this most perfect person,
Right.
it is very, very confusing when they become someone else. And so when the devaluation phase begins and a mask comes off, this is where the manipulation begins. This is where the gaslighting begins. And, gaslighting is another word that is thrown around a lot right now. So gaslighting is when you manipulate another person into doubting their perceptions, experiences, and understanding of events. So it is a form of emotional abuse. In fact, it is a highly calculated form of manipulation because it is trying to destabilize your perception. It's coercive control by someone you trust, by someone you love. And it's intentional. So a lot of people will say, are they aware of their behavior? Are they aware that they are manipulating you and hurting you? Well, if gaslighting means that it is intentional deception, there's intent. That means that they are aware of what they are doing. They know exactly what they are doing. And you can bring all the evidence and show them, and they will deny it because they live in this delusional world that they have created. So, for instance, my first husband spent 14 years cheating. I had proof. I showed him. Hey, you're having an affair. No, I'm not. What are you talking about? Well, who's this? You're overreading it. You don't know what you're talking about. No, that wasn't me. That didn't happen. They straight up lie to your face.
Wow.
Even when he moved out and lived with another woman. I'm not having an affair, Stephany. What are you talking about? You are crazy. Okay, well, you're not at home with me and the kids, and you're living with her. That is an affair, right?
Yeah.
That's the definition of an affair. We aren't divorced.
Kind of, sort of, yeah. That would be it.
And so why do they gaslight you? It is because it helps them avoid any responsibility or blame for their actions. If they can say that did not happen, it didn't happen that way, then they can go in their head and create their own illusion that it did not happen, and they believe their lies. And they try to convince you that they are right. You see how confusing this gets?
Yeah.
It's a mind. It's a mind.
Yeah.
And so, some of the words they will say, they'll say, you are too sensitive. Oh, you can't take a joke. It's just a joke. Stop taking everything so personally. Right?
All jokes aren't funny.
I'm just being sarcastic. You are the one with the disordered personality. You are bipolar and you need to go see a therapist. See, they switch everything around and they put it on you. And here you're thinking, like, what just happened? What happened to that guy that I just fell in love with? And who is this monster that has just appeared and is trying to control my life? What just happened? And so they may disappear for a couple days, shut themselves in the room, go pout somewhere. Both my ex-husbands like this one, because when someone is like giving you that silent treatment, and they go off and they avoid you, and then you go chase after them trying to figure out what happened. That's power and control. They have just manipulated and controlled your emotions. And now for the next day or 2 or 3 days or week, however long they decide to give you the silent treatment, you are miserable. because
Wow.
you can't figure out what's going on. And then they tell you it was you. And you're like, what did I do? I don't even know what happened. I'm so confused. And then 3 days later, they pop back in like nothing ever happened and bring you flowers and say, oh, I love you. Let's go out to dinner tonight. I want to take you out. You're like, what?
That's
It
mind
is
blowing right there.
so all of this devaluation with this intermittent love bombing, and then more devaluation and more intermittent love bombing, it creates this thing called cognitive dissonance. It is a fog. You start to live in a fog, and you're like, what is going on? And you know, in the beginning, in the idealization phase, where they became the person we wanted them to be,
Right, right.
during this devaluation love bombing stage, they start conditioning and programming us. We become a different person because they keep telling us it's our fault that, you know, I wouldn't have cheated if you weren't so busy. That was my first husband's thing. Well, you're so busy in law school. You're so busy doing all of this. You neglected me, and I have needs. So I had to go seek admiration and affection from other women because you were too busy.
So he did finally admit it.
Well, kind of, but not really, because that's not really admitting it. That's more he blamed me.
Right, but I'm saying my question was more like he's saying he did it for this reason, but he finally just kind of owned that he actually did
that
it.
was a very long time.
Okay.
After many years of doing it, that was his reason. But then it all came back. It was my fault. If I was there for him, he wouldn't have had to go seek attention from other women. And so, you know, so we become a different person. We bury our true authentic self, because if our true authentic self might set off one of their little rages or one of their little disappearing acts or something, so we bury that. We don't show them everything. And, you know, I stopped giving my opinion on things and just would be like, okay, sure, whatever, to keep the peace, to keep the status quo.
So that had to be a hard way to live, correct?
Oh, it's horrible. It's horrible being in a narcissistic relationship.
Right.
It is horrible. But when you're in it, you don't fully see all of that. Because again, remember the cognitive dissonance. You are in a fog now. They've created this fog. And so it's hard. And all the gaslighting, they're twisting your words. They're twisting your reality. They're making you doubt yourself. They're telling you are the one that needs fixing. They are perfect. Remember, they are God's gift. They are perfect. And so the victims start internalizing everything. Well, who do I need to become to survive this marriage? And so, and I say survive, and it sounds like horrible, but it is, but when you're in it, what has happened with all this intermittent love bombing and devaluation, it has created a trauma bond. And so a trauma bond is a strong emotional connection formed between the victim and the abuser, and it's developed through that cycle of abuse, through the devaluation and intermittent reinforcement, the love bombing.
Right.
And so in relationships with a narcissist, this bond forms when the narcissist provides love. And I said, I'm doing air quotes here because it's not love. And everything I've said, I'm sure all the listeners could recognize this is not love.
Right, absolutely.
It is a fake love. Now, the victim, of course, is in love and is feeling like we are giving love, but we are not receiving love.
And then that affects that love cup that you talked about before.
Absolutely. It's empty. There's nothing in it. So this bond forms when the narcissist gives the love, attention, validation, but then it's sporadic with with the abuse, with the manipulation, with the neglect, and so it creates this bond. And I like to also explain it like a drug addiction. And so the first time someone uses a drug, they get this really high dopamine release.
Mm-hmm.
And so that keeps the person coming back. And so they come down from it, and it's uncomfortable being down from it. So you need to use again, right? So get that high release, dopamine release again. And so that's what creates an addict. They're constantly trying to get that high. They want to get that first high, but every time they use, they get less dopamine released, right?
Right.
Similarly, with a trauma bond to a narcissist, that first high was the idealization phase. What do I have to do, and who do I have to become to get that person back that I fell in love with?
Right.
Well, that person was an illusion. That was fake. That wasn't even real.
Can't get back something that wasn't real.
You can't get something back. Yeah, exactly. That wasn't real. But we stay addicted to the cycle because we keep believing that maybe the next cycle we'll get that first guy back that we fell in love with.
Mm.
And so you stay and you become addicted to this. Okay, well, it's bad right now, but it's going to get good. And then I might find that first guy back. And so this is why when you hear people, well, why don't you just leave? Well, it's not that simple. One, you're completely invested in it. Two, you're tangled up in it now, like a bunch of knots. And so you'd have to undo all these knots. And that's just, is it worth it? You've already invested so much in this relationship, in this marriage. You have kids together.
Right.
And it's not always horrible because they know that they can't always be horrible. They have to throw in some love bombs. Otherwise, no one would want to be with these people. They are horrible, miserable, exhausting people to be around. So they have to throw in some good stuff every now and then. And it keeps us addicted to them and to this cycle. And so it's very challenging to leave, which that is the final stage, is the discard. So the discard stage is exactly the way it sounds. What do we discard? We discard things we've used up. We discard things that no longer serve a purpose in our life. We discard garbage. Mm-hmm. And so when a narcissist has either completely conditioned you into this robotic, responsive, empty person,
right,
you're no longer fun to them. Because this is all the game. They will discard you. And that will either mean completely removing, emotionally leaving you to where it just becomes two people living in a house together. You do not interact. You're just there. Or they will physically leave and go seek out a new source of supply. Because you are used up, you're not fun anymore. And so this is why when people have been discarded, why it is so easy for the narcissist to move on to the next person. You'll hear stories. People say, well, he told me he loved me 2 days ago, and now he's engaged, and it's been a week since we broke up.
Wow. That's quick.
It can happen quick. There was I saw this meme a while ago, and it was like, there's nothing more, I don't even know it, but it is something like, a narcissist falls in love so quickly. There's nothing like a narcissist in love who has just left a relationship. Well, they move in quickly. I don't know. They're just fast.
I got you.
I just messed that up. But
someone who, hears this, that may have seen it, they may get it.
Yeah, right.
Now, Stephany, reflecting on your journey, What specific characteristics or behaviors and thought patterns have you observed to emerge as a result of experiencing narcissistic trauma?
Like the behaviors and experiences after you've left the relationship, so say after the discard or after you have left, or after you've done the hard work and you've
After
become
you've after you've done the hard work.
yeah, so
Or basically, well, I'll say this, what does it take? It's really like, what are those
yes,
characteristics and behaviors that it take to go from the discard, as you've explained it to us, to, being able to do the hard work to come out of it?
yeah, so it's very, very difficult to leave these relationships. And when you're discarded, you're forced to leave.
Mm.
And so I always say, the people who actually leave, when you find that worthiness within you, and when you find that courage and bravery within you, and you say, I'm done playing this sick game, I want out. That's the only other way people leave these relationships. You are either discarded or you finally work up the courage to leave. It is very hard because you have that trauma bond, right?
Yeah.
And we've invested so much, and we think that, what if let me just try it out for another year, because what if that guy is in there? That guy from the beginning, I want that guy back. And it is very hard to explain that person never existed. That was an illusion. It was fake.
You said you married two narcissists. So
yeah,
when you experienced the second one, was it a little bit easier to identify that his narcissistic traits?
Yes.
Since you had already had the experience with your first husband?
Yes. And so thankfully, my first husband, I was married to him for 14 years. My second husband, I was married to him for 4 years, and we were separated for 2 of those years.
Okay.
So thankfully, but when I truly believe that until we learn the lessons, we continue to repeat the patterns.
That's true. And
so for me, I had come to this place where it was like, I had left my second husband I lost my eyesight, and I was at my sister's house just crying, like, why me? What did I do wrong? From the outside, I'm very successful. I am a good mother. I was a good wife. I did everything right. But yet, why did I keep attracting these horrible men into my life, these horrible relationships into my life? And I was just sitting there in this like victim mindset that I was stuck in for a very long time.
Yeah.
And people would ask, well, what are the lessons? Well, there are no lessons when you are stuck in a victim mindset, because I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do anything wrong, except for I loved 2 of the wrong people. That's all I did wrong. So there are no lessons. And sitting in my sister's house, just crying, like, God, why me? I'm a good person. I did everything right. Why me? And it was in that moment that I felt God, divine, saying to me, Stephany, you are not seeing your story through the right lens. You need to let go of this victim story. And at the time I lost my eyesight. I couldn't see for several weeks. Wow. And so, I felt in that moment that God was saying, Stephany, you are not seeing your story through the right lens. I physically couldn't see. I metaphorically could not see. And it was as if God was saying to me, Stephany, you need to let go of this victim story. And you need to become the star of your story. You see, when we are in these narcissistic abusive relationships, we are not the star of our story. The narcissist becomes the
Very good
star,
point.
becomes the hero of our story, and we become the side character in the background.
Wow.
We are all meant to be the star of it's our story.
Correct.
Right?
That is so
It is
true.
our story. But it's over time and slowly through all of this coercive control and everything I explained earlier, we slowly take a step back in our own life.
Yeah.
And the narcissist becomes the star of our story. And so when we let go of that victim mindset and we take our power back, and taking our power back and being the star of our story means rewriting our story.
Yes.
And so first, to rewrite your story, you need to recognize these patterns. You have to have that awareness. You have to open your eyes and see that what just happened. And then you have to look for the lessons because we have to break these cycles. And so when I was able to let go of that victim story, instead of seeing my two ex-husbands as monsters trying to destroy my life, because for many years, that is what I said and what I saw.
Okay.
And so I said, okay, well, if they're not monsters here destroying my life, what if they were teachers here sent to teach me some powerful lessons?
Whoa, that's a different way to look at it.
And I had to pretend. I had to pretend here. I had to say, what if, and what would that look like? And so I got out a journal and I said, okay, fine. What did these teachers teach me? I started with my first husband, Josh. If you're not a monster and you're a teacher, what is something that I learned from being married to you and from 6 years of post-separation abuse as well? Okay, well, the first thing that came up was, you showed me about boundaries. You showed me that I am only responsible for my boundaries. You see, in 14 years that I was married to him, with all of him, reaching out to other women, wanting to have these emotional affairs and ended up, physical stuff as well, I was boundaries police. I'll go police his boundaries. I would patrol his boundaries. And I'd confront the other women. He's married. How many of us are boundaries police? I know I'm not the only boundaries police here, patrolling someone else's boundaries and neglecting my own boundaries.
Wow.
And so going into my second marriage, I thought I had boundaries. You know what I took to that marriage? Those toddler fences that are portable and you can shape them in all kinds of different.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
I do.
So I showed up in that relationship carrying my little toddler fence, and I called that a boundary. So I set it up all nice, made, this straight line, said, here's my boundary. And he came up and pushed up against it. And I said, oh, let me pick it up and move it over here. It's portable. I picked it up and I moved it 10 feet over. And then he would come up and push up against those boundaries, and I would pick up my little toddler fence and move. Okay, the boundary's over here now. I went all over the yard moving my little toddler fence. That is not a boundary.
Yeah, it's true.
A boundary is something that is firmly planted into the ground. A boundary is something that when someone tries to come up and push up against your values or something that you are firm on, they cannot push it over. So I go back to my journal and say, thank you, Jace, for showing me a toddler fence is not a boundary. And so I did that and just went through it and filled up this whole journal, just pretending in my head, because it is hard for us who have been in these relationships. How can we take our abuser who has tormented us and provoked us and
Yeah.
done all kinds of horrible things to us, how can we say, well, this is a great, wise teacher. What did you teach me? No, he's a
Hard to
monster.
do that. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you have to pretend. But once you can go there and you can pretend and just imagine, I filled up a whole journal of lessons. And when you're stuck in that victim mindset and you can't see the lessons, you will repeat the patterns. I
That's
can tell
true.
you time and time and time again. This is a very concrete way to figure out the lessons, because when you know what the lessons are, you know what needs to be worked on. You
Yeah.
know what needs to be healed and what needs to be released and let go of.
That is very true. Yeah.
And this
I
is
agree.
the only way. And then you can move on with your life, knowing that you have broke these patterns and you have broke this cycle. And you can enter other relationships without fear that you're going to repeat it again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I completely agree. Stephanie, these have been some really incredible insights. I mean, I've learned so much. I have a page and a half, almost 2 pages of notes, but um, just because you've given such valuable information. And as you mentioned in the very beginning, there are so many people who have run it across narcissists and they just didn't know what they were dealing with. So thank you for shining a light and helping someone to understand what, some of the things that they've experienced, the gaslighting, the devaluation, the bombing. All of those things are things that I think that people experience. And as we mentioned before, they just don't know how to put a name on it. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so this has been really great. But we're going to take another short break. And when we come back, we're going to wrap up with some guidance for those who are embarking on their journey of self-discovery. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Want a chance to win exclusive You Are Not Your Trauma merch? Here's how. Leave a rating and a review on your favorite podcast platform and share your thoughts with us. It helps us reach more listeners who may also be seeking healing and growth. Once you left your feedback, visit feedback.youarenotyourtrauma.com to let us know you've entered by entering your info and the word feedback in the message section. You could be a lucky winner. Now stay tuned for today's inspiring episode, and thank you for being a part of the You Are Not Your Trauma community.
Okay, we are back. Now, as we wrap up this episode, I do have one final question for you, Stephany. And that is, what do you hope that others take away from your experiences that you've shared?
Yeah, I really want you to know that one, you're not alone.
Mhm.
And when we do find words, because as you were saying before the break, like that was me. My background is in domestic violence. I was trained. I worked with law enforcement and I worked at the prosecutor's office. I did not know I was in psychologically and emotionally abusive marriages.
Right.
And so if it can happen to me, it
Mhm.
can happen to anyone. And
Yeah.
so I say that not as like this the high and mighty. It's just that I have all the knowledge and I still was in it.
Absolutely.
And I did not have a word for it either until I started, going through all of this and trying to figure out what happened to me, because I did not know what happened to me. And I needed to find that a word to describe it. And so you are not alone. Another big important point is that they will not change. And I can't say that enough, because we stay thinking and believing, if I just keep changing myself, I will eventually find the right match for him or for her. And I'll get that first person that I fell in love with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But the problem is that we are the ones who change. We are the ones who lose ourselves. We are the ones who bury our true authentic self so deep down, and they remain the same. They will not change. We cannot love them to death. We cannot love them enough to get them to change. The only thing that we can do, which actually is the most loving thing to do for them and for you, is to release them and let them go.
Thank you. This is good. I think there's someone who definitely needed to hear that they will not change. I actually have run across a guy on TikTok who has been diagnosed as a narcissist, and he informs people about, narcissistic behavior. And he has said something very similar. So, just making sure that people are aware. You said you can't love them enough. You can't love them like you, it's just nothing that you can do. And I think it's important for people to understand that it's bigger than them and it's outside of their power, so that they won't continue to devalue themselves or allow themselves to be devalued by someone who, has that condition. And you said something else is the best thing to do that you can do for them and for yourself is to release them. Because honestly, when someone does have a personality disorder, if they're not getting the help for it, then there's nothing you can do to help them become better. So
Yeah.
thank you for
And
sharing that.
yeah, absolutely. And we aren't their therapist,
Yeah.
and they won't even go to a therapist, so it's,
Yeah.
so
I
just
can.
focus on you and rediscover yourself, rediscover your true authentic self. And that is the next journey after leaving, is rediscovering
Rediscover.
you.
And actually, so I do have a follow-up to that.
Yeah.
Is, for those that are on that journey of self-discovery, after any traumatic event, what guidance would you offer them?
So one of the big things to do is first to understand that when you leave a relationship with a narcissist, you have been brainwashed. So you really have to rewire your brain, rewire your mind, and get new thoughts into your subconscious
Mhm.
mind. And so it is a lot of deep inner work. It is taking back control of your mind. It is learning how to stop reacting from the environment, because they condition us to react from the environment. And so this is actually the books I'm writing. The first book is Awakening. I was blind and I couldn't see. The second one is Reconditioning. It's what happened to me and how to understand how the brain and the mind work and how to
Okay.
get all of that back. And then the third book is Becoming. How do we rediscover our true authentic self and do the work?
Well, Stephany, thank you so much for sharing your journey and your wisdom with us today. Your story, it is a powerful reminder that we are not defined by our traumas, but by the strength that we find in overcoming them. So now I want to invite all of our listeners to join the conversation. Share your own stories or steps you're taking on your journey to self-discovery. I want you to use, to self-rediscovery. I want you to use hashtag journey of self-rediscovery, and be sure to tag You Are Not Your Trauma podcast. And you can do that on Facebook, on IG, or TikTok. This is an opportunity for us to all inspire and uplift one another, because that's what this is all about. Now, as we wrap up today's episode, I want to thank you all for listening. And I want you to remember that in this journey of self-rediscovery, every step taken in understanding ourselves is a step towards healing. And to each of our listeners, again, thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of You Are Not Your Trauma podcast. Your presence is a vital part of this collective journey. Now, if you found today's episode helpful, please be sure to share it with someone who you know can benefit from the information that Stephany shared today. Also, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the show. You can check out the website, www.youarenotyourtrauma.com, to leave feedback for the show, to request to be a guest on the show, to subscribe to the show, get information on show guests, or to get information about advertising on You Are Not Your Trauma podcast. You can connect with You Are Not Your Trauma podcast on Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook at You Are Not Your Trauma podcast. And if you have a story to share, please email me at contact@harrietmharris.com. Also, don't forget to download the You Are Not Your Trauma app for more resources and community support. It is a fantastic tool to accompany you on your healing journey, and it is available in the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store. Now, if you need additional resources to aid you in your journey of healing and self-discovery, I encourage you to download the You Are Not Your Trauma Resource Guide. It is available through the app or by visiting resourceguide.youarenotyourtrauma.com. Now, until next time, keep walking your path, keep rediscovering yourself, and remember, you are not alone on this journey. Bye-bye.